Hello everyone, people. Is my voice clear to everyone? Am I audible to all? It's clear, right? Okay, good. So good evening to all of you. We'll just wait for a minute or so and let people join in. And once we have good numbers, we will go ahead. Just give me a minute, people. I'm on mute. Just give me a minute. Okay, so people, we are good to go. I think my voice is audible, and this is one of the mocks of CAT 2018. Very similar. Now, because CAT 2019 was very tough, people have made CAT 2019 the mocks very tough, right? Most of you are experiencing a very high level of difficulty in some of the mocks. So Nehal says that I felt second passage was tough, so didn't attempt and got 12 correct out of remaining RC. Okay, so people see there is this thing going on that what should we do if we have a difficult. See, in the mocks, as you prepare for the mocks and you want to move your score up, you have to ensure that you are very quick with in deciding what you are going to attempt and what you're going to leave. This is really very important because the sooner you take this decision, the better it is for you. There are 34 questions to be solved in 60 minutes. So if you spend around 4 minutes in a question and then you decide to leave that question, then you have lost a good amount of time. So within 2 minutes, you should decide whether you want to give time to this question or you don't want to give time to this question. Otherwise, if you keep on spending 4 minutes in every question and keep on leaving the questions, then you will end up attempting only around 17, 18 odd questions, out of which you would have left many of them, and eventually you will get around 8 to 10 correct, and that would not be a very, very encouraging score, right? So it is important that that decision has to be quick, and that is the biggest problem most of you are facing, that you're not able to look at the complete section. When I say look at the complete section, I mean to say that you're not able to have a look at all the questions. So you have to ensure that you visit all the questions, and within optimum time, you decide whether you want to do this or not. So you have to develop your ability to basically evaluate the difficulty level of the question. That is very important. Is it difficult? Is it easy? Will it take time? Won't it take time? And it's not that you have to do it within 30 seconds. Does 17 to 18 correct questions fetch? Yes. I think in a paper of average difficulty, I mean, if you get 18 correct, so it would be, let's say, 54 marks. And out of it, if you have, let's say, got around 6 to 7 incorrect, then you will get around 48, 47. So anything above 45 is likely to fetch you around 90 to 94 percentile. in an average difficulty paper. If the paper is very difficult, then 45 plus might fetch you 96, 95 percentile. So please understand that this is very important that you attempt or you reach all the questions. Okay, so now look at this passage here, and I will read this passage for you. A flash of sapphire, a flutter of wings, a tiny bird, or was it an insect? Vanishes the briefest mirage. Moments later, it reappears, this time at a better angle. It's a bird, all right, a thumb-sized dervish with hyperkinetic wings that can beat 80 times a second, producing the faintest hum. Tail feathers paddle steering gently in 3 dimensions. As the bird stares into the trumpet of a bright orange flower, a thread-thin tongue flickers from its nasal beak, a sunbeam glances off its iridescent feathers, and the reflected color as dazzling as a gemstone hung. Little wonder hummingbirds inspire heartfelt affection and stuttering efforts at description. Even reserved scientists can't resist such words as beautiful, stunning, and exotic. Now, this is a long passage, but then do you think author has given anything of substance in this passage? Please tell me. In this paragraph, do you feel that the author has given anything of substance or substantial? I don't see anything substantial in this paragraph. Do you see, people? Correct? So there is nothing substantial. Now, people, this is how you have to save on time. You always have to decide. See, it's not that all the paragraphs of all the passages would be very difficult and everything is out of reach. No. So sometimes you would be lucky to say, books, boss, theek hai yaar. This first paragraph of the passage talks about hummingbird. It is introducing hummingbird, saying that it is doing something remarkable, it is beautiful, it is dazzling. A greater wonder is that the seemingly fragile hummingbird is one of the toughest beasts in the animal kingdom. Some 330 species thrive in diverse and often brutal environment, from Alaska to Argentina, from the Arizona desert to the coast of Nova Scotia. So it shows that where do the hummingbirds survive? They are living at the edge of what's possible for vertebrates, and they are mastering it, says Carl Schumann, who knows of a captive hummer that lived 17 years. Imagine the durability of an organism of only 5 or 6 grams to live that long, he says. Its cranberry-sized heart, which averages 500 beats a minute, would have thumped 4.5 billion times, nearly twice the total for a 70-year-old person. Yet these birds are durable. So the author seems to be talking about some remarkable things about the hummingbird. He says, yet these little birds are durable only in life, in death. Their delicate hollow bones almost never fossilize. This was one reason for the astonishment that greeted the recent discovery of a jumble of a 30 million year old fossil bird remains that may include an ancestral hummingbird. So they don't fossilize, and that's the reason why when they found 30 million year old fossil, they were surprised to find it as an ancestor of hummingbird. The other surprises was where the fossils were found in southern Germany, far and modern hummingbird. To some scientists, the discovery shows that hummingbirds once existed outside Americas, then went extinct, or maybe the fossils weren't true hummingbirds. Skeptics, including Schumann, argue that other groups of birds evolved hummingbird-like characteristics many times through the eons. True hummingbirds, say Schumann, evolved in Brazil's eastern forest. Okay. They are a bridge between the insect and the bird world, says Doug Ostuler, who studies hummingbird. He has examined hummingbirds' flapping motion and observes that the electrical impulses that drive their wings muscles look more like those of insects than those of birds, which may explain why hummingbirds produce so much power per stroke. And then he says that Ulster also has analyzed the neural pathways which function with a lightning speed of most agile birds. They are certainly fearsome, gram for gram, perhaps the most confrontational players in nature. I think the hummingbird vocabulary is 100% swear words, says Sherry. This aggression stems from fierce territorial instincts shaped by their need to sip nectar as often as every few minutes. Hummingbirds compete by challenging and bullying each other. Face to face in midair, they post up, pirouette, dive to the grass, and paddle backwards in dances. Okay, so what this paragraph is doing, see, when you're reading a passage, there is no need for you to keep on worrying about, Are mujhe yaad ho raha hai ki nahi? Am I remembering everything? Am I missing something? You can't read with a sort of paranoia. You have to read with some kind of relaxation. You can't learn about hummingbirds and get sucked in, Sherry Williams says. And that is how it all ends. Now, for me, this is a very, very simple passage for two reasons. Firstly, there is not much of density of information. There is only one topic which the author keeps on repeating time and again, and he says it is about hummingbirds. In the first para, as far as I remember, the first para talks about the hummingbird, and then in the later stages, it talks about the fossils of hummingbird, which is surprising, and there is a bit of skepticism as well, whether hummingbirds really existed or not, and what exactly the fossils have to say. It has come somewhere in the middle of the paragraph. And then towards the end, there are lots of name of scientists who have some kind of agreement or disagreement. Effectively speaking, this paragraph has nothing substantial to give me. So if you ask me, sir, what is the central idea of the passage? There is nothing like central idea in this passage. The author is simply describing the hummingbird and talking about its various interesting facts and discoveries about the hummingbird. There is nothing substantial in this paragraph. So if you have given 4 minutes to read this paragraph, this passage, you have actually given 2 extra minutes. And you have to understand this. You have to treat every passage as per its merit. I don't say that this passage should have been finished within 60 seconds, but I also say that this passage should not have taken more than 2.5 minutes for you to read. If you take 4 minutes to read the passage, then you have taken 1.5 extra minute, which you could have invested in the questions. So the strategy tells me that if the passage is very ordinary and it's all about information and some kind of, factual data, there is no need for you to read this passage 20 times. Because every question will take you to a certain part of the passage where you can find the answer. And this is happening in this passage. All of the following statements about hummingbirds are true except. So there are 4 options given to you. You have to go and check every option and see where exactly what is not true is the right answer. Correct. So you will have to go and check every option. So you have a choice of either leaving this question or doing this question. But I feel that because it is talking about some factual statements about the hummingbird, it is worth attempting this question. You can't say that this is a tough question because it is not asking you to infer. It is simply telling you that all of the following are true. That means there must be some kind of factual basis for this question. So we had read hummingbirds where they are found. When the word Germany had come, the author had clearly said that they are living right. यहाँ पे दिया हुआ, it is given somewhere that they are fine. The other surprise was where the fossils were found in southern Germany, far from modern hummingbird territory. To some scientists, the discoveries show that hummingbirds once existed outside the Americas. That means they are found only in the Americas, correct? So this definitely is true. So this is not the right answer. Hummingbirds' hearts weigh only 5 to 6 grams. Does it weigh only 5 to 6 grams? Does it weigh only 5 to 6 grams? So hummingbirds are found only in the Americas is true. Because what has been found in Germany is not the hummingbird. It is the fossil of the hummingbird. That means basically in Germany, it was found once upon a time. It is not found anymore. So option A is true. Now you can go and check hummingbirds' hearts weigh only 5 to 6 grams. Is it weighing 5 to 6 grams? So go and check hummingbirds weigh 5 to 6 grams. I think the figure 5 to 6 grams had come. Where exactly it had come, you can scan the passage quickly. And it is better you spend your time in finding the answer rather than reading the whole passage and giving 4 minutes to it right at the start. कहाँ पर दिया हुआ है? Where is it given? So 5 to 6 grams यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है ना? It says here, imagine the durability of an organism of only 5 to 6 grams. So when you go to this paragraph, you have immediately found the answer because definitely 2 is not correct. So there is no need to check C and D, and I think within a span of 2 minutes to read the passage and 2 minutes to solve the question. So within 3 to 4 minutes, you could have got this question correct. So are you finding the process? I hope you're realizing how the process works. This is very important, people. I always say that heart is not mentioned, correct? So most of you feel ki, sir, it's a very, very simple question and we could have got this correct in a very short amount of time. That's precisely what is happening. That is what confidence is all about. People, if you're not able to perform in your mocks and if you're getting somewhere around 70 percentile, you're always in the game. Okay, don't worry about it. The game is open as long as you're getting about 70-75 percentile. Because on a given day, you can score 90 percentile as well. So there is no need for you to feel depressed, because the thing is that when you feel depressed, you start losing momentum and you start running away from the exam. I don't want any of you to feel that way, because if the negativity starts coming in, you will stop working hard, and that will have a negative, that will be a negative feedback and it will further deteriorate your performance. Why does Doug Altshuler call hummingbirds a bridge between the insect worlds and the bird worlds? So this also has been mentioned somewhere. that it is a bridge between the insect and the bird world, correct? Where exactly has it come that this is a bridge between the insect world and the bird world? कहीं तो दिया होगा ना? I had read somewhere in the paragraph. Why not one is correct in question two? अपन आते हैं ना उस पे. So let's go and check the last paragraph. Somewhere it is given. They are a bridge between the insect and the bird world, says Doug Astor, who studies hummingbird. He has examined hummingbirds' flapping motion and observes that electrical impulses that drive their wing muscles look more like those of insects than those of birds, which may explain why hummingbirds produce so much power per stroke, more per unit mass than any other vertebrate. Altshuler also has analyzed their neural pathways, which function with lightning speed of the most agile birds. So they have one quality of birds and they have the other quality of insects. And that is the reason why Altshuler calls them as a bridge between bird and insect. This is what apparently seems to be the reason. So क्या लगता है? Why does Altshuler call them a bridge? Hummingbirds' wing strokes are much powerful than those of birds and much more like those of insects. ठीक है. So this could be the reason. This could be one of the reasons, right? So the neural pathway is like that of a bird, and the wing strokes are like those of a insect. So this can be one of the reasons. What about option A? The way hummingbirds' wing muscles are powered resembles those of insects rather than those of birds. The way hummingbirds' wing muscles are powered, or wing strokes are powerful. What do you see? Now go and compare. This is the point of comparison. When you see two very close choices, this is how you have to compare them. One option says that hummingbirds' wing muscles are powered, and the other option says that wing strokes are much more powerful. So let's go and check what exactly they have to say. It says here that they have examined hummingbirds' flapping motion, and electrical impulses that drive their wing muscles look like. It says that the electrical impulses that drive their wing muscles look more like those of insects than those of birds. And that is why they are able to produce so much power per stroke, more per unit mass than any other vertebrate. So what exactly is being said here? It is the electrical impulses that drive their wing muscles. And it is this that explains why hummingbirds produce so much power per stroke. So it is the electrical impulses that drive their wing muscles. So the way the hummingbirds' wing muscles are powered resembles those of insects rather than those of birds. And hummingbirds' wing strokes are much more powerful than those of other birds and much like those of insects. So it looks very close, right? The way hummingbirds' wing muscles are powered, so it is like the electrical impulse. Hummingbirds' wing strokes are much more powerful. So is it the way it is powered, or is it I mean, it's very close choice, but hummingbirds' wing strokes are much more powerful than those of other birds. So wing strokes, the power of the wing stroke is spoken in B, and the way hummingbirds' wing muscles are powered resembles those of insects. Is it the power? See, what exactly do we have here? Is it the power, or is it the, I think, electrical impulses that drive their wing muscles look much more like those of insects than those of birds, which makes my hummingbirds produce so much power to more than any other vertebrate. More than any other vertebrate. Now, this is a very, very close choice, right? Wing strokes, very close choice. I think this is, so you have to keep on. I think the mechanism might be the same, but it is the power that is generated. Superior, I think it's a, ठीक है अब क्या करेंगे चलो, anyways you can mark 1 or 2 and you can move ahead. ठीक है, this is a very close call. I mean, I think it is B because hummingbirds' wing strokes are much more powerful. The way hummingbirds' wing muscles are powered resembles. Anyways, ठीक है, what is given, I don't know. I mean, this is again a very close call. So let's not give too much time to it. तीसरे क्वेश्चन का आंसर क्या होगा? They are amazing little Frankenstein, which of the following most likely prompted Altshuler to describe hummingbirds? Why is he describing that they are amazing little Frankenstein? Their monstrous energy levels in spite of their insignificant size. I think it's a very simple question. Yes or no? Frankenstein is a monster. So if you know the meaning of the word Frankenstein, then you can directly mark the answer even without looking at the passage. So when something is little, it means it's a small thing. But at the same time, it is Frankenstein. That means it is having huge power. So a small thing having huge power, and that's the reason why the phrase little Frankenstein has been used. Their monstrous energy levels. Why monstrous? Because Frankenstein word has been used. And why insignificant size? Because it is very small. So from 3, you can directly mark the answer C. Now, what happens, people, in the exam is, this is very important for analysis. You will find that this kind of question has been gotten right by almost 60 to 70% of people who attempted the question. Similarly, this kind of question must have been got right by almost 80 to 90% of the people who attempted the question. So your percentile goes down primarily when you get these kind of questions incorrect. That is question number 1 and question number 3. And for a question like number 2, you will find that it's always evenly divided. If you look at the percentage of people who get a particular question correct, the more difficult the question is, the smaller the percentage of people who get that question correct. In other words, it is not the difficult question that actually put you behind in the rank. It is the easy and the moderate question that you miss, and that throws you out of the competition. So the point is that if in your paper you have not been able to attempt most of the questions, you always run the risk of messing up with your paper. So यहाँ पर क्या था, ठीक है, there was second question. Now we can keep on discussing endlessly. See, people, it is not my job to prove why B is right and A is not correct. The problem that I often face is that these mocks are designed by some third party. I can only discuss and I can only question the way you can question. So now you see that A is very true, B is also equally true. You can keep on discussing endlessly. Why not A, why not B? ठीक है यार, but then in the exam time, should you give 8 minutes to it? Or should you give more than 3 minutes to it? I think within 2 minutes, you should take a call. मुझे A mark करना है, B mark करना है, छोड़ना है. Because if you give more 4 minutes to it, it is pointless. You should have left the question. Why? Because every extra second given to it is actually taking you away from the target of attempting 27, 28 questions. सबको समझ में आया? Is it clear to everyone? ठीक है? So let's go and check this the second paragraph, okay, and we will read this. So 3 out of 2 was very much possible in this passage. So you can say, boss, I could have got 2 out of 3 correct. So this was the possible score in this particular RC. I could have left one question, I could have solved it. That's a different thing, okay. Now let's go to the next one here. It says, like most of my generation, so I will read this here, like most of my generation, एक minute, sorry. So I will read it now. It says, like most of my generation, I was brought up on the saying set and find some mischief for idle hands to do. Being a highly virtuous child, I believed all that I was told and acquired a conscience which has kept me working hard down to the present moment. But although my conscience has controlled my actions, my opinions have undergone a revolution. I think that there is far too much work done in the world than that immense harm is caused by the belief that work is virtuous. And that what needs to be preached in modern industrial countries is quite different from what always has been preached. Until this point, I know that the author is taking a slightly rebellious turn. He says that work has been virtuous, but he believes that work is not virtuous. Everyone knows the story of the traveler in Naples who saw 12 beggars lying in the sun and offered a lira to the laziest of them. 11 of them jumped up to claim it, so he gave it to the 12th. This traveler was on the right lines. But in countries which do not enjoy Mediterranean sunshine, idleness is more difficult, and a great public propaganda will be required to inaugurate it. I hope that after reading the following, the leaders of the YMCA will start a campaign to induce good young men to do nothing. If so, I shall not have lived in vain. So when you read this first paragraph, it's a long paragraph. But what do you get from this? You only get a few sentences. I think that there is far too much work in the world, that immense harm is caused by the belief that work is virtuous. And what needs to be preached in modern industrial countries is quite different from what always has been preached. So the author is trying to give his opinion in these sentences. This is more than enough for us to bring out the crux of the matter. And that is that work is not as virtuous as it seems, and rather we should keep away from work. This is what the author says. But in all seriousness, I truly believe that a great deal of harm is being done in the modern world by belief in the virtuousness of work. So the author says that the belief that work is virtuous is basically causing us harm. First of all, what is work? Work is of two kinds. First, altering the position of matter at or near the Earth's surface. Second, telling other people to do so. The first kind is unpleasant and ill paid. The second is pleasant and highly paid. The second kind is capable of indefinite extension. There are not only those who give orders, but those who give advice as to what order should be given. Usually, two opposite kinds of advice are given simultaneously by two organized bodies of men. This is called politics. The skill required for this kind of work is not knowledge of the subject as to which advice is given, but knowledge of the art of persuasive speaking and writing, that is advertising. So the author says that there are two kinds of people, the one who work and the one who direct the work of others. From the beginning of civilization until the Industrial Revolution, a man could, as a rule, produce by hard work little more than was required for the subsistence of himself and his family. The small surplus above bare necessities was not left to those who produced it, but was appropriated by various warriors and priests. Much that we take for granted about the desirability of work is derived from this system. So, and being pre-industrial is not adapted to the modern world. Modern technology has made it possible for leisure within the limits to be not the prerogative of small privileged class, but a right evenly distributed throughout the community. The morality of work is the morality of slaves, and the modern world has no need of slavery. So what exactly is happening in this? In this para, the author says that the surplus was given to warriors and priests, and now in this industrial society, a leisure can be not limited to only a privileged class, but almost to entire community. Okay, so there is, so it is not that in the good old days only the top notch people. So see people, when you read this kind of a passage, you have to understand the author says that work is not valuable, correct? That means what is he valuing? If he's not valuing work, he is valuing leisure. Leisure basically means what? Rest. So it is very much implied from the passage itself that the author is in favor of rest and not work. And that is what he's saying, that when societies become industrialized, then leisure is possible for everyone. That is what he says in this sentence. But a right evenly distributed throughout the community. Leisure का मतलब क्या होता है? To rest, to have a good time without work. It is obvious that in primitive communities, peasants left to themselves would not have parted with the slender surplus upon which the warriors and priests subsisted, but would have either produced less or consumed more. At first, sheer force compelled. How would you rate this passage? I would rate that as long as I can read. See people, I have to read the passage. So ideally speaking, I would have said कि ठीक है भाई इसको बाद में आ जाऊंगा मैं. I can say कि भाई ठीक है, I will come to this later on. In the exam time, I might go ahead and say कि is there a better passage which is more readable? So I can go to that. But my aim is to touch all 24 questions. So whether I take this in between or I take it towards the end, it doesn't matter. But yes, ideally I would take it towards the later stages. Why? Because I don't want to disturb myself right at the start of the section. But nevertheless, even if I read this passage, I don't see there is much of difficulty. Why? Because there are some abstractness. There is some abstractness in the passage. But if you look at the overall argument, it is very much going in one direction, and that is work is not valuable, leisure is valuable. And there was time when leisure was only the prerogative of the upper class, the privileged class. But because of industrial revolution, the author says that leisure can be evenly distributed throughout the community. At first, sheer force compelled them to produce and part with surplus. Gradually, however, it was possible to induce many of them to accept an ethic according to which it was their duty to work hard, although part of their work went to support others in idleness. So this is what happened in the good old days. The peasants used to work hard, and whatever surplus they produced, it went to the kings and the noblemen. and they used to spend much of the time in idleness. The conception of duty, speaking historically, has been a means used by the holders of power to induce others to live for interest of their masters. Bilkul sahi. The idea of duty is basically that you work, you do the hard work, you produce a surplus, and I will keep the surplus and I will do nothing. This is what has been in India since a long, long time, a feudal system, the zamindari system, that you work on my land, you produce a surplus, I will keep it with me, and I will sit idle. Of course, the holders of power conceal this fact from themselves by managing to believe that their interests are identical with the larger interests of humanity. Sometimes this is true. Ancient Athenian slave owners employed part of their leisure in making a permanent contribution to civilization, which would have been impossible under a just economic system. Understand this. In the good old days, they could contribute to civilization only because of leisure. Leisure is essential to civilization. And in former times, leisure for the few was only rendered possible by the labors of the many. But those labors were valuable not because work is good, but because leisure is good. And with modern technology, it would be possible to distribute leisure justly without injury to civilization. Did you understand it? In the good old days, for civilization, see, understand people, the author is telling that if you want to create civilization, you should be able to contribute to civilization, and for that you need leisure. But yeah, you want to write good poems, you want to write beautiful novels, you want to draw beautiful paintings. How would you do that if you keep on working your, I mean, if you keep on working all the time, then would you be having time to contribute to civilization? Would you be having the leisure to write poems and paint and construct beautiful pyramids? No, you will not have the time. So the author is telling us that leisure is important. It is far more valuable than work. In the good old days, leisure was basically a prerogative of only few people because there was no industry. In the modern world, because of industrialization, everyone can afford to have leisure. And that is what he says towards the end. And what would you do with the help of leisure? You would basically create civilization. And what do you mean by civilization? Without civilization, I mean, if you ask me, so what do you mean by civilization? Civilization basically means something that makes you human, not just animal. So if you keep on eating and drinking, you are an animal. But if you eat and drink and you invest time in scientific, yes, established society that is giving some kind of contribution to culture. So literature, painting, music, this is what makes civilization. And if you want to have civilization, you must have time, you must have abundant leisure time. Leisure time kahan se aayega? If you spend your whole day in the field and drawing water for the cattle and sowing the seeds and plowing the field, would you have time for civilization? Would you have leisure time for civilization? No, you will not have. So what has to be done? Let few people work and let the others spend time in creating civilizational masterpieces like the Taj Mahal. Did you understand? So you also have to use common sense sometimes. See, people, it's not that everything will become abstractly clear. Most of us are used to reading passages like newspapers, always matter of fact. But here it is not that the author is telling us. So here you have to create a relationship between three things: leisure, work, and where exactly is the author putting? So he says leisure is possible if there is less work. And less work basically is possible only if you have technology. That's why modern people can afford to have more of leisure. In the good old days, this was not there. So very few people could afford leisure. Most of them had to work. Samajh mein aaya? Is the passage clear to everyone? So if the passage becomes clear, then only you can go ahead. It's not that the passage in itself is difficult. The passage is not at all difficult. Of course, you find it difficult because you're not able to relate to the passage. है कि नहीं? It's difficult for you to relate. Why? Because most of you like the first paragraph, you like the second paragraph, but as you get into the words like from the beginning of civilization, a man could produce by hard work little more than what was required for subsistence, and his family, the small surplus above bare necessities was not left. Now, many of you must not have understood this part of the passage. The author simply tells us that for warriors to fight on the battlefield, Athenian slavery kuch nahi hai. See, the Athenian slavery existed. Why? Because the slaves will do all the work, the masters will sit and contribute to civilization. So when you have too many slaves, they will cook the food for you, they will tend the cattle for you, they will do everything for you. What would you do? You will contribute to civilization. So leisure is what you have. So the owner of the slave had the leisure. And why did he have the leisure? because he had too many slaves. समझ में आ रहा है कि नहीं? So the work, so the author says here, Athenian slave owners, for instance, employed part of their leisure in making a permanent contribution to civilization. Why they could do so? Because they had too many slave owners. If tomorrow you had 20 slaves, 20 servants at your home, would you like to take cat? You would say, sir, I want to, travel the whole world. I want to go to Himalayas. I want to read beautiful books. I don't want to prepare for cat. There's no need to prepare for cat. Are you getting my point? This is the point he's trying to make. So if the Athenian slave owners, they had everything, they could make permanent contribution to civilization. And how could they make permanent contribution to civilization? The way Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal. If Shah Jahan had been a minor peasant, then he would not have been able to, invest his time and energy and money in building the Taj Mahal or the Qutub or the Red Fort or whatever, major. Are you getting my point? So you have to also put some kind of, which of the following best describes the relation between work, leisure, and civilization? Please tell me, what is the answer now? We have been discussing it for the past 7-8 minutes. Can you tell me the answer now? Now you have understood the relationship between the three words. You can mark the answer without going to the passage. What is your answer? Please tell me. Everyone is giving the answer? Though leisure is important for civilization, it is not possible for all members of society to have some must do productive work. Okay, what else? Leisure is important for civilization, but not as important as work. This is going out straight away. Because the author says that leisure is more important than work. Correct? The author is saying that leisure is more important than work. So can I eliminate option B? This pakka goes out, right? It's a complete distortion of what is given. It's a complete distortion. Agree or disagree? Any other option which you feel is a complete distortion? Now look at A. Leisure is what makes work valuable, and equitable distribution of leisure is vital to civilization. Equitable distribution, correct? This is very important. Can I say this is very important word? Leisure is what makes work valuable. And equitable means what? It would be possible to distribute leisure justly without injury to civilization. Justly का मतलब क्या होता है? That everyone should get a fair share of leisure, correct? So can I say A is very close to what can be the right answer? Work is irrelevant. You mean to say that there is no need for work at all? So everyone will sit and enjoy. So who will do the work? I mean, just imagine some of the options are just outrightly ridiculous. The author is not saying that make work zero and leisure should be one. Irrelevant to civilization. How does he say it is totally irrelevant? Do you think that the author says that work is irrelevant to civilization? Are you getting my point? Don't you realize that C is flawed? Now, though leisure is important for civilization, it is not possible for all members of society to enjoy it. So as some must do productive work. It is not possible, that's true, but it is not desirable that only few should enjoy it. though leisure is important, it is not possible. Or how is it not possible? Because of industrial revolution, it is possible. So even D goes out. Are you getting my point? It is not, and with modern technology, it would be possible to distribute leisure justly. So if leisure can be justly distributed, then how can you say it is not possible? Can I say A is the best choice? Yes or no? Do you realize how the options are worded? They are so closely worded, but still you feel that option A is the best. Why? Because it is precisely better than all the others. Do you realize this, people? Now, correct. I hope you have. So this is a very, very good question in the sense that there was some minor variation in each option. So you should have, leisure is what makes work valuable. Leisure is important for civilization. Leisure is vital to civilization, though leisure is important to civilization. So you will find that all the choices, correct? You will find that all the choices had the first part, which was very similar. This part is very similar to this part, is very similar to this part. The only difference is in the second part, and that is where you had to check, boss, is it capturing what the passage has to say? Equitable distribution is possible and desirable. Not as important as work, stupid. Irrelevant to modern civilization? No, the author has not said work is irrelevant. It is not possible for all members. It is possible because of industrial revolution and because of technology. Agree or disagree? सबको समझ में आ गया? So this is how you have to do the analysis, people. And you'll always find such questions which are doable. Which of the following correctly gives the gist of the passage? Now we had taken the first question on very similar line. You have the the fifth question. Which of the following correctly states the gist of the passage? Please tell me. Which option is correctly stating the gist of the passage? Now we have discussed this many times. Can you give me your answer? Historically, work has been unfairly emphasized over leisure. Historically, work has been unfairly emphasized over leisure. Historically, leisure has been the privilege of only few people. Historically, leisure has been the privilege of only few people. ठीक है? So A, B, C, D all look good from the first point of view. But this will soon change as modern technology changes contemporary civilization. But this is a relic of pre-industrial society and should have no place in modern civilization. Historically, so, but this is a relic of pre-industrial. Option B and C are almost alike, or do they have a difference? They have a difference, right? Leisure has been the privilege of only a few people. Work has been unfairly emphasized over leisure. But this is a relic of a pre-industrial society and should have no place in modern civilization. Historically, work has been unfairly emphasized over leisure, but this will soon change as modern technology changes contemporary civilization. Again, very close choices. So the first part seems to be good in almost all the cases. Leisure has been the privilege of only few people. Leisure has been the privilege of only few people. ठीक है, सही लग रहा है. Historically, work has been unfairly emphasized over leisure. Historically, work is it ठीक है? But this is a relic of pre-industrial society and should have no place in modern civilization. Is technology changing civilization? Okay. Is it right to say that technology is changing civilization? I mean, look at these two words. See, this is where I say that the devil lies in the detail. Now, you just tell me that these are two words which are, is modern technology changes civilization? Is it changing civilization, or you are trying to create civilization? है ना? See, understand the wording of it. The author says that when you have leisure, you create civilization. So it is not that modern technology is not a changing contemporary civilization. Technology will make leisure available to everyone. This is what it is doing, telling us. Understand this. Technology word has been used in the passage, but not with respect to changing of civilization, but with respect to making leisure available for everyone. I hope this is clear to all of you. Can I say that A and D are slightly distorting? Yes or no? Please tell me. Are you realizing this? Technology will give you leisure because technology will help you do lots of things for which you had to put your heart and soul. So it is not that technology is changing civilization. Technology is not changing civilization. It is helping you. It is helping leisure reach everyone. So leisure has been the privilege of only a few people. Work has been unfairly emphasized over leisure. ठीक है, दोनों सही लग रहा है. But this is a relic of pre-industrial society. सही है, and should have no place in modern civilization and should have no place in modern civilization. So what do you think? Is it C or is it B? Historical leisure has been the privilege of a few people, or historically work has been unfairly emphasized over leisure. Very close choices. C answer है वैसे. The answer is C. Historically, the work has been unfairly emphasized over leisure. I mean, it's very close. I feel that on a given day, both B and C, but leisure has been the privilege of only few people. But I think this is the gist of the passage. The gist of the passage is not that leisure is only for few people. The gist of the passage is work has been unduly emphasized over leisure. ये gist है actually. The gist of the passage is not that leisure has been. The author has mentioned this towards the end, that leisure is the privilege of only few people. But he says that that's why if you look at the passage, he is continuously discussing this till the last paragraph. Almost till the last paragraph, the author is discussing this. He keeps on telling us till this point. है ना, यहाँ तक he has been discussing what? Why should you work so much? है ना? Almost this is all this area is dedicated to why so much of work. And then towards the end, he says that, of course, the holders of power conceal this fact. Sometimes this is true. He says that sometimes this is true. Ancient Athenian slave owners. So, you know, the gist of the passage can be seen more in C than in B. But ठीक है, चलो यार, गलत हो गया, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? The sixth question. I hope you have understood then why it boils down to close. Yes. ठीक है, देखो, wrong तो होगा. See, people, I agree that a little here and there, very close. I mean, leisure is being the privilege of only few is as good as saying that work has been unfairly. But then, ठीक है, मतलब, you can say whichever way, it is a matter of day. Virtuousness of work is basically dominating the passage. That is how the author starts. And then he says that virtuousness of work has been emphasized unduly because I mean, there was no technology, so surplus had to be produced, and so on and so forth. What is the point of the anecdote, the 12 beggars? 12 beggars ka point kya hai? Now go and check. It's a good question. You read this and tell me that what exactly is happening in this. Sorry. Where is this question? Do you see the 12 beggars anecdote? Anecdote basically means a story, a small story kind of a thing. है ना? Everyone knows. So this is what it is. Everyone knows that the story of everyone knows the story of the traveler in Naples who saw 12 beggars lying in the sun and offered a lira to the laziest of them. 11 of them jumped up to claim it, so he gave it to the 12th. This traveler was on the right lines. But in countries which do not enjoy Mediterranean sunshine, idleness is more difficult and a great public propaganda will be required to inaugurate it. Now look at this. He says that everyone knows the story of the traveler in Naples who saw 12 beggars lying in the sun and offered a lira to the laziest of them. 11 of them jumped up to claim, so he gave it to the 12th. Why did he give it to the 12th? By 11 log, he wanted to give a doll. Lira is a coin. It's a currency. So he wanted to give lira to the laziest of them. है ना? 11 of them jumped, but he gave it to the 12th. Why did he do it? Now go and have a look at the auction, so you will realize. What is the point of the anecdote of the 12 beggars? Which point do you think he's trying to make? Yes, quickly. The laziest beggar was so lazy that he wasn't interested in making money. I hope you realize now. The laziest beggar was so lazy that he did not even make an effort to prove that he was lazy. I mean, he was so lazy that he didn't even get up to take the lira. समझ में आया कि नहीं? So by not even rushing, see, understand, he wanted to give, how, अरे C होगा ना इसका आंसर. He wanted to give it to the laziest of all. Correct? To 11 of them rushed to take the lira from him. The 12th one did not. And he gave it to the 12th guy. Why did he give it to the 12th guy? That means the 12th guy was the laziest one. And how did he come to know that he was the laziest one? How did the traveler come to know that the 12th guy was the laziest one? Because he did not even make an effort to prove. अरे भाई उठने की भी हिम्मत नहीं थी उसके अंदर, उठने का ही मन नहीं था उसका. Correct. He was so lazy that he didn't even bother to get up. Did you realize this now? Did you realize the anecdote? Now you go to the other choices. The laziest beggar was so lazy that he wasn't even interested in making money. अरे भाई उसको लीरा मिल रहा है, so he was so lazy that he wasn't interested in making money, or he wasn't willing to put the effort. So laziness has to do with the effort, or is it the interest in making money? I mean, what is it? समझ में आया कि नहीं? I mean, I don't like this phrase, he is making money. I give you 1 rupee coin, you say I'm making lots of money. Absolute nonsense this option is. Material rewards for what? Is there any kind of performance or some kind of achievement going on that he wants material reward? Are you getting my point? C is the best. I mean, C, once you look at C, you will realize that he did not even make an effort to prove that he was lazy. Clear to everyone, yes or no? It's a nice question, but that's how it is. When you say that he did not care about material rewards, see, rewards and punishments are always, it demands performance. If there is no action, there is no reward. You don't give reward to a beggar unless he does something. Are you getting my point? So if you perform, then you will get reward. If you don't perform, you will not get the reward. If you perform evil acts, you will get punishment. So the word material reward basically means some action or some performance was expected. ठीक है? The laziest beggar was so lazy that he wasn't interested in making money. This phrase itself is awkward. What is the relation of the first para to the rest of the passage? Yes. What do you think? The first para has the story, and then the rest of the passage is trying to prove that story. So what do you think is the relation of the first paragraph to the rest of the passage? Look at the 4 choices and tell me what is the best answer. टंग इन चीक का मतलब है इन स्लाइटली फनी. टंग इन चीक नहीं होता है मतलब. What is tongue in cheek? Suppose if you go for a very serious occasion, and in a very humorous way, if something is introduced, it is tongue in cheek. So if you go to meet the Prime Minister, you expect that he would be very serious and sincere, but he jokes a bit, and then you say that he was introduced to us in a tongue in cheek manner. Tongue in cheek का मतलब होता है थोड़ा सा. देखो, C definitely goes out. Yes or no? Yes, people. Can I say that option C definitely goes out? It introduces the topic of the passage that state the opposite, but it is not the opposite. The topic of the passage and the anecdote are very much in similar lines. There is nothing like it is going in the opposite direction. So C definitely has to go out. It introduces in brief all the main points that the author goes on to discuss. Is it stating all the brief points? No. The idea of leisure has not come. It is not introducing in brief all the main points. He's just giving you a little introduction. So the the answer has to be from A or B. Yes. Which one do you think is the best? It provides a slightly tongue-in-cheek introduction to the serious topic of the passage. Okay, tongue-in-cheek का मतलब slightly humorous. Why is it a bit humorous? Because of the anecdote. The anecdote will slightly make you laugh a little. है ना? What is a roundabout? Do you know the meaning of roundabout? गोल गोल घुमाना. Not coming to the point straightforwardly. Beating around the bush. Correct. It's a negative way. If you want to, let's say, if you want some kind of some money or some help from me, you will not directly call me and ask me for help. You will go round and round, beat by the bush for a while, and then you say that मेरे को थोड़ा पैसा चाहिए. So I will tell you why this roundabout way of coming to the point. So do you think that the author is a roundabout way of coming to the point? Yes or no? Is there any roundabout way of the author, the way the author has come to the point? I don't see any roundabout way. Because he straight away comes to the point in the very first sentence. He says, like most of my generation, I was brought up on the saying, Saturn finds some mischief for idle hands to do. Being a highly virtuous child, I believe all that I was told and acquired a conscience. But although my conscience has controlled my actions, my opinion have undergone a revolution. I think that there is far too much of work. So he's straight away discussing what exactly has to be there. And then he gives the example of the traveler, and then he puts it. So definitely there is no roundabout way. Of course, you might say a tongue-in-cheek kahan par hai? Tongue-in-cheek maybe slightly because of the anecdote, it might have become a bit tongue-in-cheek. Otherwise, I have no better choice than to take option B as the best choice. Yes or no? Yes, clear to everyone? So you have to understand the meaning of the word, people. Roundabout is beating by the bush. But the author is not doing that. He is very, very clear with what he wants to say. He says in the very first few lines that work is overvalued. It is portrayed as virtuous, but I don't think so. And then you take the example of the traveler, and he goes very clearly in the right direction. An example of ancient Athenian slave owners in the last paragraph shows that. What do you think? The question of the slave owner has come. What does it show? Looks good, right? Because the society in which the ancient Athenian had slaves was not a just society. Just kaise hoga? See, a just society is the one in which there is equality. You can't have slaves with you and then you say that you are living in a just society. है ना, समझ में आया कि नहीं? So can I say B is definitely distorting? B is distorting and even D is distorting because they say that a just and equal society. बहुत society just equal तो हुआ ही नहीं है. You are having slave, Athenians are having slaves and you say that they have a just and equal society. How is it possible? You have only A and A and C to choose from. Which one do you think is better? The slaves were treated well. ये कौन बोलता है? The slaves were treated well. Can I say that A is the best choice? Could have been solved within 30 seconds. See, people, what is important is you should have noted this, a just and equal society as the ancient Athenians, how the society has become just. It's a paradox. On the one hand, you are having slaves, and on the other hand, you say that it is a just society. How is it possible? So B and D, they both go out. Correct? Ninth question. The author is likely to disapprove which of the following? Which one do you think is the author likely to disapprove? Author is against. Disapprove किसको करेगा? Too much of work, no work, no work, no work. So definitely the author will disapprove A, because the author believes that there is too much of work happening everywhere. No leisure. बिल्कुल सही. Correct for everyone. Easy question. See, this is what I say a good paper is all about. ये CAT में ऐसे, even last year CAT had these kind of questions. I don't know why, but I still think that last year this is how most of the questions in CAT were like. They were doable. Of course, there were difficult passages to read, but that did not make the questions very difficult. Everyone is clear about it. Out of 9, how many you could have solved? 2 from the first passage, I mean. And 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. कितना हो गया? 6 में से कितना? At least 4 you could have solved. So in total you could have solved 6 questions out of 9. You could have left, let's say 1 or 2, maybe 1 you could have left, and you could have got 2 wrong. कोई बात नहीं. Clear to everyone now? So this is the way you have to attempt. So we have 4 questions in the next RC. We will take this RC. ठीक है, quickly करते हैं. It's not difficult at all. We can finish it. Wouldn't you feel more comfortable if you had an employer who spoke your language? In other words, wouldn't it be easier for an employee or an employer to communicate effectively if they were aware of each other's cultures, beliefs, and morals? Of course. Some may argue that leadership skills are universal, regardless of what the country the leader is in. On the other side of the debate are those that say that leaders must adapt their leadership style to different national cultures, but it is essential that leaders understand the culture of their employees. Leaders cannot choose their styles at will. They are constrained by the cultural conditions that their followers have come to expect. The reason behind this is clear. Different cultures perceive what a leader may be trying to communicate differently. For example, a Japanese employee may see what may be seen as harsh to an American employee as normal disciplinary reaction. What is the first paragraph? A very simple paragraph. The author says that leadership is universal, but still leaders have to understand the culture in which they are working. Okay? And the example has been given that what an American employee might feel harsh, the Japanese employee may feel it as normal. While it is true that business is global, business organizations have culture shaped by the business it is in and the people who run the business. Managers are products of the distinct cultures in which they have learned and conducted business. Imagine a situation in which a manager who was trained at an American school is asked to run the Japanese manufacturing facility of his British firm. This individual needs to understand the culture within which he works and how his employees perceive leadership. Research has found that one size does not fit all. A manager needs to modify leadership qualities tailored to the unique culture within which he or she works. Again, a kind of repetition to what has come in the earlier paragraph. In the earlier paragraph, the author had given the example of the Japanese. In this, he gives the example of a British firm being run by some XYZ, and the author says that one size does not fit all. The same thing in different words. Then the author says communication skills are also important to the leader, but again, how these skills are perceived differs among within culture. What one culture views as effective communication may be seen as unclear in the other. For example, American managers are more likely to provide directions to lower level workers on face-to-face basis, while Japanese managers are likely to use written memos. Likewise, in the US, a manager will most likely give direct negative feedback, whereas in Japan, a manager will have the information relayed by a peer of the employee. Okay, so this is the difference. Charismatic leadership is thought to broaden and elevate the interest of followers, generate awareness and acceptance among the followers of the purpose and mission of the group, and motivate followers to go beyond their self-interest for the good of the organization. But different cultural group may vary in their conceptions of the most important characteristics of the charismatic leadership. For example, in some cultures, one might need to take strong, decisive action in order to be seen as a leader, while in other cultures, an independent approach may be the preferred approach to executing effective leadership. Leaders are expected to have vision, but how this is displayed differs from culture to culture. Leaders are often thought to be risk takers, but research found that risk taking is not universally valued as contributing to outstanding leadership. Okay? So again, some kind of aberration has come. In conclusion, national cultures affect leadership style by the way of the follower. Knowing the manner in which the follower perceives communication, vision, risk taking, and charisma is key when a leader is developing his leadership techniques for a culture. So, in short, the culture is important. You have to understand the culture, and accordingly, you have to adapt your leadership to the culture. Can I say this is a very, very simple passage? Less than 2 minutes. हाँ कि ना? Yes, people. Less than 2 minutes. Very simple passage. See, this is how a CAT paper should be. मुझे लग रहा है कि पेपर ऐसा ही है वैसे last year it might have had a few difficult RCs, but don't take it that this is going to be a real tough thing and it's going to be very difficult. सब कुछ नहीं होने वाला. Read it, take within 2 minutes, read, finish the passage and take the questions. From the comparison, correct. So if I had given you a choice, you should have left the second RC, you would have taken this RC first. I mean, take the first RC of the hummingbird, then you can take this RC because it is very simple. Comparison has been made between different examples of leadership, America, Japan, and so on and so forth. From the comparison between American and Japanese work cultures, we can infer that. What can you infer? Now let's not go to the passage. There are sometimes questions that you can solve simply in one reading. Is it possible for you to solve it in one reading? Please tell me yes or no. What is the answer? Please tell me. क्या लग रहा है? Arpit Shukla has given the answer as C. American employees prefer a more open and informal communication and feedback process. So airports. Correct. Secretly होना चाहिए ना? Japanese employees don't want themselves to be criticized on their face. It is good. जैसे मुझे बोलना है ना, डैडी को मुझे see if my father wants to tell me something, he will convey it through my mother. Are you getting my point? If my father wants to tell me something, he will convey it through my mother. Why? Because in our culture, you should not speak something offensive on the face. But this is fine in American culture. Did you understand why C is the right choice? And from where do you get this? From the example of the feedback. In American cases, the feedback is given straight on the face, but in Japanese cases, the feedback is conveyed through an employee or a subordinate. Difficulty था क्या? इन्फॉर्मर का मतलब क्या होता है? इनफॉर्मल मतलब American employees prefer more open and informal communication. What is informal communication? हाँ, casual थोड़ा सा. ये देखो ना, American faced. देखो, what is the meaning of informal? How many of you know the meaning of informal? Informal का मतलब क्या होता है? हाँ, casual, but it has one more meaning to it. Unofficial way. लिख के दूंगा तो फॉर्मल हो जाएगा ना. It has many meanings. Yeah, not sticking to guidelines. Correct, correct. Kushal is precisely what he has used. Formal तरीका मतलब क्या होता है? If I put a mail, that is formal. You can put a mail to me, that is formal. You can communicate to me verbally, that is informal. समझ में आया कि नहीं? What is wrong with D? Aggressive क्यों बोल रहे हो यार? Where do you see aggressive word? I mean, where exactly do we, from where do we get this aggressive? So straight on face. So, matlab, if you are getting it communicated through a subordinate or through a peer, that is having a personal touch. है ना? It is incorrect. See, personal touch का मतलब directly see. If you criticize someone on the face, that is not aggressive. I mean, it's not can be called as aggressive. It might be perceived as aggressive. समझ में आया कि नहीं? And secondly, this second part is so हाँ नहीं कोई issue, doubt is fair enough. But do you realize why the personal touch is totally misplaced and why the word aggressive is slightly awkward? See, you might perceive it as aggressive, but the author is not telling it as aggressive. Okay? And secondly, when you say that the Japanese preferred personal touch, in that case, the boss should directly go and communicate the feedback. Why should he ask the subordinate or the peer to go and give the feedback? That is not a personal touch. That is a kind of remote communication, indirect communication with impersonalness. Which of the following have been described in the passage as qualities essential for effective leadership? What do you think? Very easy question. There is no need to read the passage. Can you mark the answer? Please tell me, what is your answer? Yes, D, everyone. Understanding the culture in which one is working and being charismatic, vigilant, communicative in one's approach. Looks good. All the promising words have come. No need to even go to the passage. Which of the following best reflects the author's stance on effective leadership skills? Yes. क्या लग रहा है? Which one do you think reflects the author's stance? बिल्कुल सही. 12th is very good. He disagrees. Absolutely. Point blank. He says that there is no universality. Why? Because you have to adapt to the culture. The author is clearly taking a stance, and that stance is that an effective leader has to accommodate to the culture in which he is working. Very simple question. You can finish both the questions in less than 30 seconds. 13th one. According to the passage, which of the following actions of a manager will meet the approval of American employee? Who is an American employee? American employee is the one who takes feedback without any kind of grudge. So which one do you think the American employee would approve? So, अच्छा मुझे ये बताओ, according to the passage answer करना है ना? Everyone is clear about it? What is the question asking you? According to the passage. So, creating work teams, ये कहाँ से लग रहा है कि passage में दिया हुआ है? From where in the passage do you realize that team and creating team is given as the emphasis by the American employee? Right across the passage, understand this, right across the passage, the American employees has been discussed with respect to what he would prefer and what he would not prefer. But I never came across the word team in the entire passage. So this is not likely to be the right choice. Whereas allowing employees to add their grievances freely का मतलब क्या है? If you have some kind of complaint, you can walk in your boss's cabin and speak about it. Because if the boss can give you his feedback openly and you won't feel bad about it, then as an employee, you will always wish that there should be a system in which you can freely, openly air your grievances without any kind of hesitation. So can I say that for B, I can say it is according to the passage, whereas C might be true, but there is no according to the passage. Yes or no? We have to answer this question keeping two things in mind. According to the passage, this is very important. This is true according to the passage. I don't have any evidence for this according to the passage. समझ में आ रहा है? You are answering for the passage, not based on what you feel or what your experience has to say. Many people went and marked answer C because they feel that they're working in an American company. ये तो होना ही है, C mark कर दो भाई. अरे भाई, passage has not discussed it, so why should you mark? Clear everyone? Yes or no? Please tell me. This is the kind of a question where you rush and you get it wrong. Isn't it true that you got it wrong simply because you found C, you liked it and you went directly, but you forgot that the question is from according to the passage, not as per your own experience. Okay? So these are the kind of questions which are easy, but we go wrong, we get it wrong just because of our own error. Suggest an appropriate title for the passage. What do you think? What do you think? The necessity of adaptive leadership, correct? The necessity of adaptive leadership. Easy question, everyone. Correct? So what do you feel? I could have got all the 4 questions correct, right? So can I say that now you could have got out of 14, 10 questions correct? Dynamics मतलब the important factors. Dynamics का मतलब क्या होता है? The factors that govern. So dynamics का मतलब है कि there are different factors. But see, you might mark A, but here the point is the necessity of adaptive. The word adaptive is the focus. Leadership is too broad and dynamics can have many things into it. But the author is specifically concerned about adaptive leadership. His whole focus is adaptability. His focus is not dynamics. Dynamics becomes too broad. Leadership may not be always about adaptability. It could be about so many things. But the author is restricting his discussion only to adaptive leadership. Are you getting my point? That's why C is a better title than A. I hope everyone is clear about it. So these are the kind of questions which I feel are very similar to what comes in CAT level, not very difficult, not very easy. And this is what I say is a good CAT paper. अब यार difficult बना. Sir, after sometimes when I couldn't get the gist of course. Yes. See, you have to see if the passage is very simple, one reading is enough. But if the passage is not simple, then you will read the question, then you will use the options. And again, you will read the passage. So while solving the passage, you will definitely read the questions again. Sorry, while solving the question, you will read the passage again. And that will make things clearer. Did you understand? See, people, there is no hard and fast rule, you know, कि ऐसे ही करना है, उसको वैसे ही करना है. Eventually, it all evens out. The only point I'm trying to make is if you feel that this is tough, you just leave it and see how many questions you can attempt. You try 2-3 mocks this way. Read the RC within 2.5 minutes. Take the question. If you like it, solve it. If you don't like it, leave it. And see whether you're able to reach 40 marks by doing so. Okay? So I hope you have taken something back home. We have solved 14 questions today and a lot to learn, but I think it was relatively an easy paper with a few questions here and there, but a decent one. In the next, in this 40 marks will fetch you around less than 90, 85 to 90, not more. 50 would have fetched you 90 to 90 percentile, 90 to 93 percentile. You should have thought of 50 marks. In this paper, 50 marks, easy. I haven't seen the rest of the paper, but I think 50 बनना चाहिए था. अरे यार 10 तो इधर ही बन गए. 14 में से 14 में से 10 बन गया यार. If you take 10 more and if you get around 7 correct, है ना? Yes, we will discuss the remaining in next class. We will not leave a single paper. जो भी करो पूरा करो. Don't leave it half done. Doesn't make any sense. Always complete your task, even if it means you go for 2 sittings. Same has to go with your mock. If you finish a mock, analyze it completely and thoroughly. Okay, so next time when we meet, we will discuss the rest 10 questions from RC, maybe 1 or 2 questions from VA, and we will see how much we could have scored in this, correct? Okay, so let's meet. Probably next time I will drop the message. Okay, I will come with a timetable and we can set the next time. Okay, chalo. Good night, everyone.